Hello, this is Brett Lonsdale, and I'm here with Shane Young. How are you, Shane?
I'm great, Brett. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic as well. It's
Nice.
great to see your den where all the magic happens.
This is my place.
Wonderful. All right, so Shane Young, as with a lot of the presenters for Lightning Tools, we go back a long, long way. In fact, we were just talking a few moments ago how there was photos that Shane shared that we looked a lot younger and than we do
Yes.
now. But Shane has transitioned to doing a lot of things in PowerApps, and it's going to be really interesting to see what you have. Obviously, you've got a lot of SharePoint background, and now PowerApps and Flow as well. So I'm really intrigued to see what you're going to be presenting today, and I'm sure it's going to be extremely useful. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand in the GoToWebinar software. Don't do it physically because we won't see you. But if you can raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you can ask your question. And Shane will certainly be able to help. And I think you're also going to open up the floor on the on your Twitter handle as well, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So over to you, Shane.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Brett. Yeah, as Brett pointed out, him and I have known each other for, I don't even know if we figured out how many years, but it's a lot. So I'm very excited to be here and just kind of chat with you guys. Because like Brett said, I have the good fortune that I've been in the space for 15 or more years and a long time. And so I've got a lot of perspective to kind of help you guys figure out this whole idea of what is PowerApps and Flow. That's what we want to kind of focus on here is what is PowerApps and Flow from the perspective of you, the SharePoint person, right? So that's going to have, we have a complete SharePoint slant for the day. So real quick here, my name is Shane Young, as Brett said, and there you go. So the big thing I want to point out real quick is on Twitter, @Shane'sCows. So as we're doing this webinar, if you want to tweet me, like over my left eye over here is my Twitter notification, so I'll see those. So if you want to kind of ask questions or mention things along the way, I think that would be very helpful because I like to make sure this session is what you guys all want to get out of it. So there's my email address. You can always email me. And then probably the most important link, believe it or not, is the one off to my YouTube. So I've got hundreds of videos at this point, probably 60 different ones on PowerApps and Flow and that type of stuff. Some just classic SharePoint stuff, some PowerShell and SharePoint stuff. Lots of fun things. So my YouTube channel is kind of popular, so might want to jump out there. All right. Oh, look at that. People are following me right now. I see you guys. I see you over there. All right. I also want to mention we do have PowerApps and Flow training, so powerapps911.com/training. But really what you'll probably find most interesting is there's a free intro to PowerApps class and a free intro to Flow class. We used to charge a few $100 for those, and as we've moved to this on-demand model, we've made those two classes free. So have at them, right? We're not going to bother you or annoy you. Just sign up and learn about these things if you find some interest. Last one, last housekeeping slide. I know slides are boring. I hate slides too, don't you worry. But so our friends at Lightning Tools, they do lots of these great webinars. Brett uses his Rolodex of cool people like me. Well, probably hopefully cooler than me people, quite frankly. But if you want to sign up for future ones of theirs, there's a little QR code you can zap with your phone if you're really talented. Or because I'm not QR talented, I went ahead and grabbed the URL for you guys because I'm a nice guy. Cool? All right. So that is all that. Because I want us to be friends, there's a picture of Chewie in the snow, and there is a picture of me in a giant horse costume. Why? Because I'm 6'4", and the idea that I walked around in an 8-foot tall costume is hilarious to people. So there you go. All right, so our agenda today. Really what our agenda is I want to make sure that as a SharePoint person, you understand what you can use PowerApps and Flow for, how they fit into your ecosystem, the licensing, which is most of you probably got available for free already, and just kind of make sure you understand the different things available to you, right? That's my goal. It's just to get you guys moving and thinking about this because honestly, ever since I learned PowerApps and Flow, it just took what I could do with SharePoint to just a whole new level, so much so that I stopped doing SharePoint stuff for the most part, and now I concentrate primarily on PowerApps and Flow. So that is that. I hate agenda slides, so I don't even want to read the bullet points. So real quick, what is SharePoint? So really what it is it's a, it's a collaboration platform we all know and love. I started with it back in 2004. I've written 6 books on it. I've had a company named SharePoint 911 at one point. So big SharePoint type of guy. But more than that, right? So more than it just being a collaboration platform, another thing that we're going to talk about today is how you could think of SharePoint as just a data source. So as you start to build and you're like, hey, I want to build a mobile app to do this thing, or I want to build an expense tracking app or things like that. Sometimes we say, all right, let's not think about SharePoint as the wonderful collaboration site that it is. Let's think about SharePoint as just a data source or just the back end, and we're actually going to build a whole front end over in something like PowerApps and Flow. So we're going to kind of talk about some of that today. All right, last dumb picture. I don't know why I like dumb pictures. I was in a picture mood, but there is a picture from 2009, right? Look how young I looked. Oh, that was at a SharePoint Saturday in Tampa, and apparently Brett is actually in this room. I did not realize that when I chose this picture this morning, but there you go. Okay, that's enough of that. So what is PowerApps, right? So PowerApps is a no-code, low-code platform for building mobile and desktop apps. Blah, 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 right? What is PowerApps? PowerApps is a real easy way for you guys to build apps that run either on the desktop or on a mobile phone. And by real easy, I mean like Excel and PowerPoint easy, right? Open up a blank canvas, drag some controls in like PowerPoint, write some Excel formulas behind those controls, and you're off and running, right? If you can build Excel spreadsheets, then you can jump in here and build PowerApps. And that's probably what excites me, not probably, it's definitely what excites me the most about PowerApps. You know, I've been in IT for 8.7 million years, and you know, it was always kind of a high barrier to entry, right? You had to be really smart, really good looking, and just really kind of, you know, a super nerd to go and build apps. And so for a lot of people, that was really off-putting. So with the advent of PowerApps, you know, one of the big things that we've seen is that about 50% of the people in the world that are building PowerApps today are not IT. Yay! They're actually business users. And business users are way more poised, way more set up to go and build these apps. Why? Because the business users understand the business problem, right? They understand the business logic, and they know what they want. And so if they can just jump into PowerApps, watch a couple of YouTube videos and put together an app and then roll that out that solves their problem, they don't have to go and talk to those gross IT people, right? I'm an IT person. I can make fun of us. We're gross, right? I got food stains on this shirt I'm wearing right now for a webinar. That's how bad I am. But this has really been the thing, right? It's been the democratization of a platform where people can go and extend and build their own apps, and you don't have to have a degree. So when I go and speak at conferences about this, when I talk to people like yourselves, right, literally about 50% of the people that I talk to come from the business side, and the other 50% come from the IT side. If I look at my customer base, it's more like 80% business and 20% IT. It's insane. The other thing, if I look at like the team of consultants that we have here at PowerApps 911, about half of them came from a business background, right? Like one of them was an HR generalist for her whole career, and she decided that she loved this platform so much she went and learned the IT side so she could be a PowerApps consultant, right? That's the type of stuff that we're seeing because you can go and drive these platforms. So I know I get really excited. I apologize, but I really love PowerApps and I really love what it lets us do. All right, back on script. Whew, sorry, I get excited. So PowerApps has also become, you know, the preferred tool for customizing SharePoint list forms. So we all know, like when you say edit item, right, in SharePoint, you get the little flyover list form. You can go in there and, you know, enter data. But if you wanted to customize that in the past, we had to use this terrible thing called InfoPath. Boo, InfoPath. And so what Microsoft's done is they've now made it so that you, with SharePoint Online, you can customize those forms with PowerApps. Yay! And so you get a great, easy to use experience. We're going to demo that, how that works in a few minutes. But that's one of the big things you're going to see, right? As you're looking at your InfoPath coming end of life, and remember when Access Web Apps, they went end of life, right? The platform to fix those, to move to from those two has been PowerApps. It's 100%, it's always the right answer, no point in arguing. So enjoy that, you know, if you're looking for how you're going to transition out of InfoPath. And of course, InfoPath is my best friend, so, or not, no, PowerApps is my best friend. InfoPath is not my friend. So here what I want to do, because I've been blah, 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 and I hate PowerPoint as much as you do, I want to go show you a couple of different apps real quick, just to kind of frame what we're going to go after here before we start looking at how you actually build some of these. So we'll switch over here, and let's see. So for example, here's an expense report app that I built. It's not very beautiful, right? But it's mechanically sound. It's really what I went for here, because this is just a demo app. You know, we go in here, I'm like, all right, I want to create a new expense report. Yay. What kind of expense is this? Or what's the title of this? How about Hanging with Brett? We did that today. Type of expense, that is definitely travel, because Brett lives on their side of the pond these days. Or not these days, I think he's always lived on their side of the pond. Whatever, you know what I meant. So then what do I need? I need a plane ticket, all right? Plane. And that costs a lot of money, because if I'm going over there and Brett's paying, I'm flying first class. So we're gonna say save, boom. Expense items as well. I'm gonna need some food. And once again, Brett's buying, so I think I need that $200 steak and 25 cents though. Gotta give a tip. Boom. So you can see that, you know, nice little simple expense report. But these are the great types of apps, because, you know, it gets your brain, there's a lot of mechanics here that you have to kind of work through. I can also say, hey, I want to add receipts. Boop. Let's add a picture of Chewy. There we go. And so I'm actually storing this image out in Azure Blob Storage, right? And that's one of the really exciting things about Power Apps is when you build apps like this, you can have multiple data sources within your app. So this particular one is using SharePoint as the data source. So SharePoint is the backend to store this data, and it's using Azure Blob Storage to store files. So gives me a way to kind of bring those in. A lot of my customer solutions, we would have a third thing here, would be SQL database to drive some stuff. Maybe we're connecting to an ERP system to pull in, you know, the different expense categories or your budget information. But, you know, I think the biggest one of my customers has an app. We have 14 data sources in one app. It's a timesheet app, believe it or not. So it's one of the very powerful things here at Power Apps. So now what we're going to do, we're going to say, let's save this. Boop. So that's going to go and write the data to SharePoint. It's going to go create this master-child relationship. And so then now we can go in here and say, view and edit expenses. And so over here, you can see there is my line item for Hanging with Brett as hoped for. We click on that. We can see we've got, you know, a plane, the food, my pictures sideways. Won't worry about that right now. We can click on the plane and be like, you know what? I really wanted to make that even more. I'm going to fly one of those really super cool planes. So we'll do 6,000. We'll say save. Boop. There we go. So now we've already updated the master. So a little simple app here, but just kind of gives you an idea of what is possible, you know, for an expense report app here in the Power Apps and Flow and SharePoint space. Let's see, what else did I want to show you? The timesheet app. How about that's this one? So this is an example of a simple timesheet app that we've written. So this is a mobile app. One very popular scenario that comes up for us. People like, you know, to replace those little time cards. So, and this is showing you what the mobile app looks like here on in the browser. In a second, we'll switch over and I'll show you what it will look like on my phone as well. But so here, it's kind of have two paths. I want to enter my own time or enter time for my team. So I'm going to say enter my time. When did I work? I worked today. Select an item. I worked at a computer manufacturer to solve the mouse problem. I used to have a bunch of like really terrible jokes in all these, and then someone, aka Nicola, edited them all out and took them as very sad. So anyway, so regular time here, you know, 4.5 hours, and then we save this, boop, and there you go. My time has been recorded in the backend system. So these are the type of simple apps that we kind of think about from the standpoint of, you know, turning paper into electronic data entry. And more importantly, these are the type of apps that we write for our non-technical folks, right? The first timesheet app I wrote was for a bunch of oil and gas workers up in Canada, right? These, you know, big burly men type, you know, big thumbs and things like that. So we had to kind of design the app around a good experience for them. But one of the things that we do in these apps as well, you know, people be like, hey, what type of training did you have to give for this? And the answer is 0, right? You should always build these apps, what I refer to as with the Hulk smash mentality. Hulk smash, psh, right? Had to do the voice. But the idea there is that we want people to be able to go in and fill out this form without thinking, right? So I click on enter time for my team, right? I'm not overwhelmed with options here. I'm like, all right, date worked is that, select a project. And so when I choose the county hospital, then I get the next thing, right? Then I say I'm provide them Band-Aids. Then I get the next thing. Now the button lights up so I can press on it. I'm not sure what this button does, right? I can click on the little inline help. Oh, these tasks are filtered, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? So trying to make it so that, someone without any training can go through this, right? So now they press the big purple button. Now they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do the training for Chewy the dog, Gills the fish, and Scuba the diver. There you go. I selected the 3 people on my crew that worked with me today. They worked 2 hours of regular time and 3 hours of overtime. We save their time, and it goes in the system. So that's been the biggest win that I've seen in my customer base with PowerApps. It's been enabling non-technical people to enter information like this in a very controlled fashion so that they could then go and do their stuff. So very, very nice little thing there. All right, so that's the Timesheet app. Let's see, what other app do I want to show you? Ooh, let's show you the AI object counter. Let's see if that one's still up. There it is. So this is one of the cool advanced things that we're kind of going for, right? Remember I told you one of the things I love about PowerApps is the democratization of the technology, of the ability to build an app. That's been a really big win for me. Well, the next step in that path for those guys is they're trying to democratize the artificial intelligence stuff in Azure. And so in this case, this is an app where I took a picture of a bunch of stuff on my desk, right? Let's just do this. Let's grab another one. So we'll say detect. We'll grab this picture right here. And so I trained an AI model, not by writing code or Python or any advanced analytic stuff, by literally taking pictures and just putting boxes around them and saying, this is Chewy, this is the pig, this is the horse, this is the dog, this is the cow, or the donkey, whatever this guy is. And so I trained a model with just a simple website, boop, 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 boop. Once I finished tagging all that stuff, then I pressed, go process. It went off to the AI engine, magical algorithms ran. And then in my app, I was able just to add this control. It's just a camera, and you pointed at a picture, and then it's like, all right, look, in that picture, there's 1 donkey, 1 pig, and 1 the Chewy. Notice this guy is the same type of material and stuff, but I didn't categorize him on purpose. So just to show you that it would completely ignored him and it ignored this thing back here and the my deodorant right here. Well, great picture, Shane. But you get the idea, right? This is the type of stuff that like blows my mind of what they're trying to do. Because once again, now I've got non-IT folks creating AI object detectors. And in a demo like this, you're like, oh, that's cute. You did some fun toys, right? But I've got a security hardware company who wants to use it to analyze doors and figure out what type of hinges and doorknobs and locks and that type of stuff are on the door. I've got a retail customer who makes some very fine Italian spices who wants to be able to go in and do shelf audits. So walk into the store, have the auditor kind of take a picture and have it count how many facings of the peppers there are versus, the competitor's peppers versus this and that. All right, very, very interesting scenarios here where, if you just kind of rethink the problem, PowerApps is opening up some doors. And this is pretty cool stuff. Let's see, what else I got here? Timesheet, object counter. The last one over here, our friend, the GPS. Did I close the GPS? I closed the GPS. All right, well, that's very rude of me. Oh, no, there it is. So also with PowerApps, remember we talked about data sources. So we can integrate with external data sources. And so in this case, I integrated with the Google Maps API. And another amazing thing, right, when you're trying to compare, I always find myself comparing it to InfoPath. And I shouldn't, but I do. One of the most amazing things about this, because this was written for, I'm drawing a blank. What was this written? Sorry, this was written to be mobile apps, right? So when I installed this, I run this app on the machine or on the phone, it automatically can take advantage of the GPS, the compass, the camera, the barcode scanners. All of these things that the hardware already did are exposed, not in a technical nerdy way, but just a simple control for grabbing the latitude and longitude. And so what I'm doing in this particular app is I'm taking the latitude and longitude, easy for me to say, that is here. I'm taking that data, I'm passing it to the Google Maps API, and then I'm showing a Google Maps image of where I'm at based on the GPS coordinates. That's pretty powerful. So now if you think about when we build apps for service workers, so one of the companies out in the West Coast that provides human and health services, or not, that's not fair. They provide work assistance services to people with disabilities, right? So people who need help to have a job, but those people want to contribute, they just need help to be able to contribute. So they have a whole program where they go and do that stuff. Well, now all of the experience around the service notes, the appointment scheduling, the hours available, all of the things, all the information that a worker needs to help someone go work their job is available in this app. And when they record all their information behind the scenes, we're grabbing all the GPS coordinates of where they're at. So that way we know, hey, you know, do they fill out 7 service tickets all from their couch? They probably lied to us, right? Or do they fill out 7 service tickets, one at the Piggly Wiggly and one at, you know, this place and one at that place? And, you know, it starts to make us go, okay, they're really doing their job. So we can start to map and plot out the coordinates for that. Very, very cool stuff. Takes no code, no effort. Yeah. I feel like I'm selling you guys used cars. So anyway, so I just want to show you a couple of little tricks there. So like here we have manual address entries. This is our office address. So a user can type it in. We can say open in Google Maps, and it's just going to fire us off to Google Maps right there. Here you go. Our company address is a UPS store. Shh, don't tell anybody. But anyway, so now you're able in here to kind of go and do and see, and then now you can have directions and things. So I'm not trying to write direction controls into the app. I'm not trying to teach the app to write its own nav stuff. I'm just launching the user's address over into Google so then they can take advantage of that. So want to get super crazy? Of course you do. So then this may or may not come as a surprise to you guys, but our friends at Google, you know how they know pretty much everything about you, right? Give or take, you know. They also, give or take, know everything about a specific address. So one of the things that you can do is you can, through the Google Maps API, I can send them an address, and it gives me back this whole host of data around it. And so in this case, I don't know what address I sent it, but it's pulling back that data. But it can pull back things like voting districts and, you know, what township is in, what city is it in, what state is it in, what county is it in, what's the zip code, what's the area code. All of the data that it knows about a given address, Google pulls it back. And so then I'm using PowerApps and Flow to extract that data so I can get it down to something a little more interesting. So, whew, I'm really excited this morning. I apologize. All right, so that's kind of a quick little rundown of what is PowerApps, right? Before we get into what is PowerApps plus SharePoint, which is where we're headed, I promise. So then before we do that though, what is Microsoft Flow? Right, so PowerApps, as we talked about, was for building these little apps, whether they were mobile apps or desktop apps. And so Flow, that is Microsoft's workflow engine. What does that mean, right? It's their system for letting computers be good at what computers are good at. Things like automation. You know, so automation can be things like, you know, every time someone adds something into SharePoint, go do this thing. Or every time I get an email, go do this thing. Or every morning at 8 a.m., go do this thing, right? These type of repetitive tasks that you don't want to go and do. I mean, one of my first IT jobs, right, I didn't have to do it, but the help desk guy down the hall, every morning at 7 a.m., we would get an email with an attachment of a CSV file of all the, you know, accounts to go look at. So he would have to wait on that email, have to sit at his desk, 7 a.m., oh, there's the email, grab that attachment, and then go upload it to a file share so then the dev processing can happen, right? What a terrible job to have, and what a terrible waste of a smart human to be like, all right, wait on the email, refresh, 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 there it is, copy, paste, go. Today, we write a flow that says, hey, every time we get an email from that vendor's account with an attachment, grab the attachment and go put it in the system. Great example of something that Flow can do for us that takes very little work. Flow is also great at querying complex external data sources. So PowerApps and Flow itself, right, they have connectors for about 300 different data sources at this point. So, you know, Salesforce and SQL and SharePoint and Marketo and MailChimp and Twitter and YouTube and, anything you can think of, they've got pretty standard connectors for. But sometimes you want to grab connectors for not just those type of data sources, but you want to go and query a web API. Maybe you wrote your own API, right? And you want to be able to go and get that. Flow is really great at doing that and enabling all those scenarios. And if you're not a dev, API is like the scariest words on the planet. I get it. I don't even know what I mean. Like application, programmer, idiot. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's interface. But one of the things I've found is that APIs, for the most part, they're just text, right? They work in this thing called JSON, which is like JSON, but too cool to have an A in its name. Very hipster, like, it's JSON instead of JSON. I don't know. Lost in translation. Anyway, all JSON is text in curly brackets, right? They're like, it's a key value pair, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. I write some text, I put something over here, and it works. I tell you this because one of the things I have done is not a developer, right? Brett could, vouch for the fact that I hate developers, and I've been mean to developers for many years, and I've never written a single line of C# code in my entire life. I can tell you that I learned how to interact with APIs because it was really just about copying some text from here, grabbing the text, and then breaking it in part. Yes. You're like, whatever, I don't care, Shane. I don't like APIs. You don't. But how many of you like Office 365? Look at you all raising your hands. I'm just imagining it. I see the room full of raised hands. So one of the things that we use a lot is this thing called the Graph API. That is the thing that kind of pins Office 365 together. Flow is really good at talking to that Graph API to do all those advanced things that were previously required a developer. Not anymore. We're going to do those ourselves. And the last little piece there, Flow also has a built-in approval engine. It's a good place to start with Flow just because it's very straightforward, and generally most approvals, not the one I wrote this week for a customer, but most approvals are pretty linear, and so it kind of gets you doing the things that you want to do. So the other big win for Flow is it lets you stop using SharePoint Designer, right? SharePoint Designer 2013. Folks, it is 2019. That is 6 years ago. And internet speak 6 years ago is like 2 millennia. So back off. The way that I try to explain it to my clients, right, is if you don't write anything net new in SharePoint Designer for SharePoint Online, right? If you're in SharePoint Online and you need to write a workflow, you should be doing it with Flow today. So, okay, so let's just go talk about a couple of demos over here real quick, and we'll start with the SharePoint one. I think that's the one that you guys will be most excited about. So here's an example of a flow that I wrote. So every time an item is created in my SharePoint list, I am going to get the email address of the person who created the item. And I'm gonna get the email address from here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get their manager. So I can figure out, that when Chewy submits it, I'm his manager. I want to actually go and say, hey, manager of the person who created this item, I want to go run an approval. So I'm going to send an email to that person, be like, hey, this thing just got created over in SharePoint, yay, do you want to approve it? And so if they say yes, they want to approve it, then we're going to post a tweet. I don't know, because I was just showing all the things I can do. Yay, we're posting a tweet. If not, we're going to send an email and be like, hey, your item was not approved. So this is a super simple flow. But in reality, if you sit down and write this flow yourself, that first time it might take you 4 hours to write this to figure out how all these pieces connect. But eventually this takes me about 3 minutes to write. And so now I'm able to come in here and automate my way through every time a new item gets created in my SharePoint list, boom, I'm doing things. And it might, in this case, I'm sending emails and tweets, but in one of my customer cases, when it gets approved, I actually go and I create it in another SharePoint list. Another one, I actually take the data from SharePoint and then replicate it over in a SQL because they need that for a different system. Lots and lots of things here. But the key is that with my flow, I have this thing called a trigger, right? What is the thing that made the flow fire? And when it comes to triggers, it can be when something changes, right? So in this case, when a new item was created in SharePoint, when an item was deleted in SharePoint, when something has changed, that can be the trigger that says flow go run. I can have button flows, right? So I want to make it so when you press a virtual button, maybe it's inside of a Power App, maybe it's inside the Flow app, maybe it's this physical button. Boop, 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 boop. When you click this button, I want to trigger the flow. Lots of different ways to start that. Great example of this whole triggering a flow. So my buddy John Levesque, he is like the flow developer evangelist dude. He was at a customer and they were walking him through the warehouse on the way to the meeting, like kind of like, oh, here's this widget, here's that widget. And he's like, hey, why are those 10 guys standing over there? And they're like, well, those 10 people stand over there because the truck arrives between 10:15 and 10:45 every day, and those 10 people have to unload it. It's like, so they just stand around and wait? Yeah, maybe just kind of get a little break and wait on it. So what they did was they ended up buying one of these little physical buttons. And so the idea was that now when someone sees the truck show up, someone walks over, presses the button, boop, or the truck driver presses the button, someone presses this button, boop. And when it does, it sends a notification, a text message to all 10 of those people. So the idea is they can keep working on their real jobs and they'll just get notified by a text message when the truck shows up every day. That customer, I forget the number, but I want to say it was over 50 grand a year they saved by putting in a simple little button flow like this. Very cool stuff. So that is one example of flow. Another flow I want to talk about for a second. Let's go over here to my flows. So here at PowerApps 911, right, if probably 95% of our customers come from people going to our website, and at the bottom of our website, there is a contact us form, right? They fill out the contact form. And because we use some generic third-party provider, what happens when we fill out that contact form, we just get an email, right? It's just an email that says, here's the data they filled out. Nothing else happens. It doesn't get saved in the database. Nothing automated goes. We just get an email. I'm like, well, that's terrible. So what I ended up doing was I was like, you know what? If someone's emailing us for help, they're probably interested in our PowerApps newsletter, right? But I didn't want to do the shady thing where I just subscribe them all to our newsletter because I hate when companies do that, and I don't do things that I hate. So what we did was we wrote this flow. Open up. Where's the edit button? There we go. We wrote this flow so every time I get an email in my inbox from this weird address, no reply at parastorage.com, I then go and grab all of the information out of the email because it really just comes in as a big blob of text, right? So all of these purple functions you see here are just about stripping that text out to extract the email address and the name of the person. So then when it gets done, what I do is I reply back to these people and I'm like, hey, you, thanks for contacting PowerApps 911 and blah, blah, blah. We love you very much. We'll get to you soon, all that stuff. But what's really important is I also have in that email, it automatically generates a yes button and a no button. And it just says, do you want to join our mailing list? And there's a yes or a no button. If they click yes, right, that starts this thing, right? So the selected option equals yes. Then we automatically add them to MailChimp and we send me an email that's like, hey, they joined the mailing list. Woo, 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 woo. And if they click no, then it says they said no. Boo. So here is a flow that I wrote to automate my own inbox, right? I was very vested in this. We went from having literally 15 people on our mailing list to, I don't even know the number anymore, but it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, all because I put in this simple little flow. When a new email arrives, go and do this thing. So now, I'm not saying you all have this, right? Brett's probably getting excited thinking, oh, I should probably do this. But for a lot of you, this might not make sense. But what I challenge you to do if you want to learn flow is come up with something like this that does interest you. This is how I learned flow, is writing a flow like this. There was big value in it for me. So sitting here and grinding my teeth and being mad, it was worth the effort because now, we've grown our mailing list. So, do you always get an email from your boss saying, hey, what's your status on a project? Or, what is this? What is that, right? Is there a scenario in your life today that makes a lot of sense to automate? Another one that I did. So I get a lot of unsolicited emails from people like, hey, fix my PowerApps problem. I try to help, right? I'm very slow. I'm always behind, but I try to help. But one of the things I've done is I've made it in Outlook. If I flag an email, then it automatically generates an email back to people, kind of an update of my current schedule and that type of stuff. So I found different ways to use flow to automate my life, and it's paid off because I learned all these things. So when a customer comes to me, or someone else in your department, or whoever you're trying to help, They come to you and they want something done. I've already got a basis. I already understand like 400 different things that Flow does because I went and learned it on things that interested me, because when they asked me to automate their solution, I could care less. So it's a lot harder to get excited about learning that, but learning it for my own personal use, there you go. So I've never been a big fan of the whole, do it so that if you get hit by a bus, the next person's life's better. No one cares. If I get hit by a bus, I do not care if your life is better or not, if my code's easy to compile. Not true. So what I tell people is do it to help future you. Assume you don't get hit by the bus, but it's you that in a year or in 6 months has to, do this thing again. So try and help future you. We're all selfish. It's okay. It's a lot easier though to do the little extra work if it's helping you. So, and then one more here. Sorry, I'm gonna get a drink. So we'll try a fancy demo now. This always backfires. Go right here. Joop. Joop. Nope. Hang on, I'm doing something, I promise. So what I thought I would do is I would share my phone here so you could actually see what this looks like from my phone, right? So phone, yay. So in here real quick, I wanted to show you the last demo. And what did I say? I want to do the Flow Camera 2 demo. So I'm gonna click on this. And this is important to understand. So when I build these mobile apps, all the user does is download this PowerApps app from Microsoft. They run this app, they sign in with their Office 365 username and password, and all the apps that have been shared with them show up right here. So that's what I'm seeing, is all these apps are the ones that are shared with me, they're showing up here. So let's open up the Flow Camera 2 demo for fun. There we go. Oh, look at that. Don't get sick, but there's my phone. Here we'll do a little like this. Boop, there's me. Hi. Right. Boop, boop, boop. You can see yourselves. No, not really. But anyway, so this is a PowerApps app that I wrote. So I'm going to say take a picture. That's a terrible face. Over in the little right there, you can see the picture. I'm going to give it a file name. We'll call this ugly.jpg. JPG. Boom. What type of animal is it? It is definitely a fish. And so I'm going to click this button, Save to SharePoint. So what this is doing now is this is taking this data, it is passing it from my phone to Flow. Flow is taking and processing, wrapping up all the data, doing all the work to write the data into SharePoint. And then Flow is saying, okay, now that I'm done, here you go, app. Here is a link to the file in SharePoint. And so now if we click on that link, we should see, watch it make me log in. No, yay! So that's the actual file hosted out in SharePoint. So I've linked right back to it. Gosh, I'm ugly. Okay, get off that screen. Go away. All right, just there we go. No. There we go. So anyway, I thought that was a good one to kind of express to you guys. And you'll see over here, like I went ahead, if we went to SharePoint, we could see that I actually had set the metadata of type of animal to fish. So I'm actually passing in data. So lots of cool stuff there that gets you, connecting all the pieces, right? So we have a Power App to do the data collection. We're using Flow to process all the information and get it to all the right spots. And then we're using SharePoint on the back end as our data storage platform. And that's giving us all the fun stuff that we ever hoped and dreamed of in one fail little swoop. So, woohoo! Are you guys exhausted? I'm exhausted. This is fun though. All right, so that is what is Flow. All right. So what do I use each one for? So really what I would say is that for me, when I think about PowerApps it's the thing that my users interact with, right? So they're using it to collect data, whether it's timesheet entries or, we're doing safety audits. We're like, oh, look, this light pole fell down. Let me take a picture of it and send it off to the repair shop, right? That's a real app that I have built. PowerApps also does some light business logic. So if it's a simple scenario like, hey, when I take a picture of that light pole, if it's just the light pole down, that's a medium priority. But if it's the light pole, and it's squished a person, that's a super high priority. So basically in my app, when I tag it, it goes either to just the person to fix the light pole, or if we smushed a person, it goes all the way up to the CEO. So they can be like, oh man, we're in trouble. Very morbid, sorry. But it's literally what one of my apps does. For me, Flow has two different jobs. One is connecting to the outside world, so that's doing things like talking to the Graph API or other different type of scenarios, like so the Google Maps API I showed, different scenarios where I wanted to go and do complex communications. It does great for that. And then it also does approvals, which we kind of looked at, and complex business logic. So for example, maybe you want to have some business logic that says, hey, when we schedule a trade show, so this is another one of my customer apps, and so that trade show might be scheduled for a year from now. So Tech Ed, or not, I'm not going to call it Tech Ed anymore, Microsoft Ignite 2020, right? We signed up for that. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that 30 days before that show, we have shipped out the booth and we have, ordered the flyers that we want to give out. So when I created that entry today, I can put those things in there, and then I have a flow that runs up every morning that checks to see if we have any trade shows coming up in 30 days. Oh, we have a trade show coming up in 30 days. And then it checks to see, is the status of booth sent true and flyers printed true. If they are, we don't do anything. If they're not, then we notify the correct people to be like, hey, you, why didn't you order the booth? So that's a complex business scenario, right? That's complex business logic where I want to have things running over time and doing math and doing that type of logic. And so Flow does a great job of that. And so then finally what we have here is we have SharePoint. And so SharePoint is just a really easy to use data source for a lot of my apps. Because for most of what we do as a company is we build these apps, the standalone apps like we've demoed so far. And so in those scenarios, SharePoint is literally just a place to store the data that is easy to manage and has a low cost. So something else I kind of alluded to earlier, but I want to remind all of you, PowerApps and Flow, you guys have the licenses for this today, right? You already have, if you have an Office 365 anything, right? It came with a PowerApps and Flow license. So there's no barrier to entry for you guys here. Get in there, start building an app. Build an app today. So then I want to kind of talk about, for SharePoint and PowerApps, there's two different ways to do it. So one is kind of like we just talked about, using SharePoint as a data source. The other one is something I haven't shown you yet, but that is customizing your SharePoint forms. So if you go back over here, let's go to my SharePoint site. Let's go to the employees list. So today, if I click on, the CEO here, you're going to see, right, that we just get the normal SharePoint experience. Yeah, we can edit the data, and we'll go in. This is just SharePoint being SharePoint. But sometimes you want to customize that. So you get this big, beautiful button up here that says Customize with PowerApps. And keep in mind, this will only show up if your list is in the modern UI or modern list. I forget how exactly we explain that these days, but whatever. So I'm going to click on Customize with PowerApps. So what this is going to do is this is going to jump over to PowerApps, and it's going to build an app for me in like 30 seconds, which is just amazing. And so it's building this simple app. But what we're going to see is that, we can just take advantage of this app. Come on, I said 30 seconds. Go faster. There we go. So it's built us an app, and so you can see right now, it's like, all right, well, here's the fields: title, first name, last name, favorite color. Oh, you want to add a field? No big deal. I also want to get their employee email in their department. Boom, boom. We can add those in. So then now we've got a custom form for that. But anything that you can do in PowerApps, you can do here on this form. So I could be, you know what? I also want to kind of go down here, and I'm going to insert an icon. I don't know why, because I like icons. All right, we're going to grab the smiley face. All right, we're going to dress this form up. Boop. There we go. We're going to have a button. So our button right now is not going to do anything, but we can have a button. We're not going to write the code to do it. But we can be like email a link. So there you go. Oh, doop. So we can email a link, right? We can come in here and start to build a custom experience around this. And let's just check. Yeah, that's good enough. So now we'll click back to SharePoint. It's like, hey, you want to save and publish that? I do. Wait patiently. I probably should have done this a different way to make it go faster, but what do? But so the idea here is that we can start to build a custom UI for interacting with our SharePoint list. And apparently if you wait long enough, goodness gracious. I don't know about you guys, but my Power Apps have been slow all week. It's had a rough week. There we go. So now we come back over here. So then now when my user clicks on CEO, see the little wheel, I know this means my Power App is loading. So now I actually have my Power App down here, right? Based on my resolution, it's down. That's my fault. But there's my little face. There would have been my button for emailing a link. So you can start to build a true custom experience. Now, there's a couple of little quick tidbits, little seeds I'll plant with you guys, because I know some of you are like super excited to go try this out. So first off, I tell you just go learn Power Apps a little bit first, so you had a little bit of background on what's possible, but you're not going to do that. So let's just talk about a couple things you might want to know. So one, probably the most confusing thing is, when we were over in SharePoint, right, we had those edit and save and all those buttons, and you're like, I don't see that here. How do I change those buttons? Well, in reality, what you want to look at is on the app, on the SharePoint integration, there is the, right, so there's the edit button, there's the new button, there's the save, the cancel. So if you wanted to have different things happen when they press those buttons, that's where you change what happens. But more importantly, this is where you can go and reverse engineer and see what is happening today before you break what's going on. So that's a big thing that a lot of people miss, right? You can click on the SharePoint integration object over here, and then in this drop down, you can control what the different buttons do. That's one. Another one, right? So if we insert a label on my screen, pull it down here. Right, one of the great things about Power Apps is look, SharePoint integration dot selected item dot hourly wage, right? Where are you, hourly wage? There you are. There you go. So there's the hourly wage field. So I'm pulling back information from this from this SharePoint object inside of Power Apps, even though I didn't already have it. So that's some cool stuff you can do. One other thing, I can go over here to File, and then App Settings, and so screen size, by default, so it made it the large one, you can do the small one, but then you can also do custom, and so you can really get in here and make it a bigger one. So one of our customers has about 200 fields that their users have to fill out in order to do this type of stuff, or to interact with SharePoint. So they make it so that the Power Apps form takes up the whole screen when they click on it, so that way I had plenty of room for all those fields. I hated what they came up with, but that was what they did, so I wanted to show you that that was an option here. So other really cool things that a lot of people miss. How many of you are into Power BI? Oh, look at all of you raising your hands. That's really neat. Right, with Power Apps, I can go over here. I can be like, insert controls, Power BI title. And so then it's going to connect to my workspace, my dashboard, and then there's my tile. And so then now my Power BI tile is here. So now imagine, right, you build a solution where it looks much nicer than this hideous brown that I made, but you build your, your data chart, your budget information, your, customer payment history. You build that data in Power BI, and then you embed that in the Power App that shows up in SharePoint, right? So then now over here, when I say back to SharePoint, save and publish, we're going to be able to actually go in there and see all of this rich data. And so now you've started to make a custom experience that is happening right here inside of SharePoint where your users are used to being, right? So if we click on CEO now, so you can see here what happened. My thing's not showing up. This comes up because of cache. So I'm just going to hit the refresh button. We'll try this a second time. There we go. So it's asking me, yes, you're allowed to use Power BI. And so then there's my Power BI chart, ugly and brown. I should really make a better demo one, but what do you do? All right, so there's my Power BI data. There's my SharePoint data. There's that fancy button that we just made. All of this stuff customized right here inside of the SharePoint experience. Now, also keep in mind as I show you the Power BI stuff, that does require additional Power BI licensing, right? I don't want to get you too worked up and not realize that you do have to have the appropriate Power BI licensing for sharing. I am not a Power BI licensing expert though, so I don't know what license that is, but I know you have to have one. So anyway, that was the first thing I kind of want to expose you guys to was, look, in SharePoint, you can just go and enhance the experience all of those fun things, right? And this button here, I went with the scenario of emailing a link. It could be to duplicate this item. It could be to tweet this item out. It could be to run a flow to go get this, send this item over to some API somewhere, right? Anything you can do in PowerApps, once you kind of get the hang of how PowerApps and SharePoint work together to make that app, you guys can take advantage of. So the other idea that comes to a lot of people is this idea that I want to use SharePoint as a data source. So I don't want to go in here and enhance this experience. I want to go build a standalone app like I demoed at the beginning of the call, but I want to do that, and I want to use SharePoint as the back end. So that is totally fine, right? I mean, for example, this app right here, all the data is actually in SharePoint, right? If we go back over to SharePoint, you can see an expense master. This is where we wrote that record that says hanging with Brett, right? And then and notice that it is ID 59. That is the SharePoint generated ID. If we go to expense details, and we scroll for a really long time because I've done this demo a lot. Come on, scroll faster. There you go. There's my plane and my food, and they just know that their master ID came from that. So I wrote a parent-child and related data using SharePoint. So it's totally possible to do that with SharePoint. If you're into building a standalone app around SharePoint and you're new to all this, go take my training class. It's free. Be my best advice. But remember, one of the things that I would recommend you do, you come over here and say, all right, I want to create an app. You want to do a Canvas app. And so then one of the really underutilized features that I use all the time when I'm trying to learn, especially back, a couple years ago when I had to learn all this stuff and there was no training, there was no data. So I go out here, I'm like, all right, I want to make an app from SharePoint. And then it's like, all right, what SharePoint site do you want? I want my PowerApps video site. What list do I want? I want the one called employees, connect. Once again, in like 30 seconds, and it better work in 30 seconds this time, or I'm gonna change it to 45 seconds in the future. In like 30 seconds, it is going to build as a multi-screen app. Boom, look at that, straight from my SharePoint data. I can come in here and be like, hey, look, there's Chewy. I can look at his record. Here's all of Chewy's data. I can go into edit mode. Oh, I can edit Chewy's data and be like, his favorite color is now red. Boom. There you go. Chewy's favorite color is red. In just, right, I mean, what, 30 seconds, we built a fully functional app. SharePoint is our data source, so we're not customizing SharePoint, right? I can run this as a standalone app right here on the phone like we did earlier. I can run it in the browser like we're doing here. So just remember that SharePoint kind of has two different roles, customized with PowerApps or supporting PowerApps. All right, I'm running out of time. I need to go faster. No, that's not true. We're almost done. So when you use SharePoint as a data source, a couple of tips I want to pass on to you. You should only use single line of text, number, and date fields. They have the most functionality. If SharePoint is truly just a data source, use those types, right? All those other things like choice columns and lookup columns and all that, they just add complexity to your app that if you're watching this seminar, you're probably not ready for. So if you do start to want to use the complex columns, and by complex column, I mean anything other than these three, then I have a whole video that will walk you through how some of those work. Another thing that you'll have to think about is SharePoint as a data source, which we do not have time to cover, but it is called delegation. So that's where when you have really large SharePoint lists or you have really complex queries like filtering and patching and that type of stuff, you can have some challenges. So make sure that if you're going to use SharePoint as a data source, that you go read up on delegation and understand how that's important to what you have going on. Right here, so two of Brett and I's friends, right? So Pieter and Serge, right? Old SharePoint guys who are now super flow nerds. They have written these blog posts that I think are great for helping you get into flow and working with the API side of SharePoint. Because one of the things you're going to find as you start to build flows, you want to do more things with SharePoint, the API side is very tempting. It lets you do some things you hadn't thought of before. So then here is a video on customizing the SharePoint form. So that's that first SharePoint demo we just did. Remind you to go watch delegation. And then, oh, there's a crazy video of like how to create lookup functionality without using lookup columns, because I hate lookup up columns. There's the devil. Just know that. All right. One more thing I wanted to show you. So back over here under flow. So when you go to flows and you want to do a new, one of the best places to start is create from template. And so come up here and just search for SharePoint. Hit enter. And so this has got, I don't even know, 100 different SharePoint ones. But so this is a great way to get inspired and to start to build it, right? So for example, we've had a lot of people lately want to do things with Microsoft Forms. So when a user fills out a Microsoft form, grab those responses and then go create SharePoint entries from those and then start an approval process and then email those off to the CEO, right? You can build those type of logic, and it's just about putting these little pieces together. So a lot of those little pieces are in here already under the different templates. So be sure to check that out because there's a lot of SharePoint functionality that Flow has. Whew. Okay, Brett, we have 4 whopping minutes left. What, did you have some questions that popped up, or do I just kind of sing a song? What we got?
Let's see. So just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, then please raise your hand. So you can use the GoToWebinar software. I see 1 or 2 in here. So yeah, let's go and take one of those. I'm going to unmute you, Nilesh. So Nilesh, fire away with your, oh, I can't unmute you. It's not allowing me to unmute Nilesh. So let's try somebody else for a moment.
The opportunity. So
yeah, when Brett's looking at that, remember you can always tweet me at Shane's Cows with your question, or you can email me, Shane@PowerApps911. I do my best to help. I'm sometimes a little behind on the emails, but I try like heck.
Fantastic. We do have Nilesh, so go ahead, Nilesh.
Yeah. So Shane, I have a question. When would you choose Nintex forms versus Nintex forms and Nintex workflow against PowerApps and Flow? So I think that is the first question. Second is, does Flow work only on list and libraries, or do they work on the SharePoint groups and all as well? So two questions I have.
Yeah, so the second question is the easier one. So today there's not a way to interact with SharePoint groups directly with PowerApps and Flow. That's the type of stuff that if you want to mess with, you have to go to the Graph API to do. So yeah, the SharePoint groups are not exposed the way that we think of groups being exposed. Office groups are exposed, and the Azure security groups are exposed, but the SharePoint groups are not exposed in a direct way. As for the Nintex question, I don't know if I have a good answer there for you, right? I mean, I have never found a problem I couldn't solve with PowerApps and Flow, so I'm sure there are scenarios where those platforms might make sense, but for me, because you've already got the licenses for PowerApps and Flow, and it's just part of the Microsoft ecosystem, there has not been a real-life customer scenario where I've been like, oh, you guys should have went with Nintex instead of PowerApps and Flow. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I don't have any examples of those, so sorry.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nilesh, and thanks, Shane. We've also got Prasad, so I'm just going to unmute you, Prasad.
Hi, Shane.
Hello.
So actually, I'm doing one asset management app. So in that, I'm taking some approvals from as a digital signature. I'm using PowerApps. In that there is signature, no, and I'm saving it in SharePoint. It is saving it as like a blob manager, like something. But I want to show that signature back to in my PowerApps, like. This guy approved and he's signed digitally, so I'm not finding way to do that. Do you have any idea to how to do that? And
yes,
this is the first question.
You have to find a way, so you can't. So if you just send over the signatures objects output, it's just a string that's like AP press blah 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 that doesn't provide any value. In one of my videos, I show you how to send it as an email attachment, and so then that gets it encoded into an actual file. So then you could use that email attachment, you could extract that out and go save that into SharePoint, and so then you could do kind of what you're thinking about. There's some other stuff. There's a new function called the JSON function inside PowerApps that allows you to grab that object, turn it into JSON, and send it out. I've not made any content around that, but I did get that working personally one day. So There's some different ways, but there's not an easy answer to that question.
Okay. And I have second one question. Actually, I mailed you. I think, as you said, you are getting a lot of mail. So, so second question was like, I was doing one visitor management app, let's say. So actually, they wanted an visitor print pass. So I just designed in PowerApps everything. While checking in PowerApps, there is no print options like print. They are not supporting. Is there any other way I can communicate to printer and print? You done like something any like that?
So for most people that want to print, what we've done is we create them a PDF. So one of the things we didn't have time for today was that with PowerApps with PowerApps and Flow, I can take inputs, I can generate HTML to make beautiful, full fidelity PDF documents. So it has headers, footers, looks really nice. And so then you've got a PDF, and so then they could use the native print capabilities of the PDF, right?
Okay.
So generate the PDF, and then your button in your app would just open that PDF, and so then when the PDF open, right, then you can hit Control P or whatever and print it out.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very
So
much.
there is no direct print option and all. What is like without? Okay.
Nope, sorry.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I think that we both have a meeting to go to. So should we just have one more question? And
sure. One last question. Who's the lucky winner?
okay, so the lucky winner is Melissa Perez. So Melissa, go ahead. I'll mute that one. There's a bit of feedback there. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's say if there's any other questions, then please reach out to Shane. So Shane, did you want to just give your email address or Twitter handle again one more time? And
just throw all this back up here on the screen real quick. Nope, that one. There we go.
Perfect. All right. So, well, thank you very much for delivering a great webinar. You could have added a little bit of humor, maybe, but
I'll try harder next time.
It was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you, Shane.
Yep. Everybody have a great day. See you, Brett.
Bye-bye.